we never give the New York Times props on this show because they're terrible.
Yeah.
But they finally did something good.
Yay.
They had a really, really powerful op-ed that they published yesterday from Samir Naji Al-Hassan Mokbel, who is currently a prisoner at Guantanamo.
Yep.
And I wanted to read a little bit from it because it is just so powerful, but I highly recommend everybody go read it in full. So there have been forced raids at Guantanamo this week. At times, the raiding forces were battling with detainees to systematically empty communal cell blocks in an effort to end this hunger strike that we've been talking about on the show and protests. And at times it got very violent. Non-lethal rounds were fired, according to the Miami Herald. So it's not only a really powerful op-ed, it's coming at a really powerful time because the hunger strike's been going on for a while now. I think it's like 45 prisoners are currently participating in it. 13 are being force-fed, which is considered a form of torture by many. Yeah. So this is Samir's op-ed. One man here weighs just 77 pounds. Another, 98. Last thing I knew, I weighed 132, but that was a month ago. I've been on a hunger strike since February 10th and have lost well over 30 pounds. I will not eat until they restore my dignity. I've been detained at Guantanamo for 11 years and 3 months. I have never been charged with any crime. I have never received a trial. I could have been home years ago. No one seriously thinks I am a threat, but still I am here. Years ago, the military said I was a, quote, guard for Osama bin Laden, but this was nonsense, like something out of the American movies I used to watch. They don't even seem to believe it anymore, but they don't seem to care how long I sit here either. When I was at home in Yemen in 2000, a childhood friend told me that in Afghanistan, I could do better than the $50 a month I earned in a factory and support my family. I'd never really traveled and knew nothing about Afghanistan, but I gave it a try. I was wrong to trust him. There was no work. I wanted to leave, but had no money to fly home. After the American invasion in 2001, I fled to Pakistan like everyone else. The Pakistanis arrested me when I asked to see someone from the Yemeni embassy. I was then sent to Kandahar and put on the first plane to Gitmo. Last month on March 15th, I was sick in the prison hospital and refused to be fed. A team from the ERF, the Extreme Reaction Force, a squad of 8 military officers in riot gear, burst in. They tied my hands and feet to the bed. They forcibly inserted an IV into my hand. I spent 26 hours in this state, tied to the bed. During this time, I was not permitted to go to the toilet. They inserted a catheter, which was painful, degrading, and unnecessary. I was not even permitted to pray. I will never forget the first time they passed the feeding tube up my nose. I can't describe how painful it is to be force-fed this way. As it was thrust in, it made me feel like throwing up. I wanted to vomit, but I couldn't. There was agony in my chest, throat, and stomach. I had never experienced such pain before. I would not wish this cruel punishment upon anyone. I am still being force-fed. 2 times a day, they tie me to a chair in my cell. My arms, legs, and head are strapped down. I never know when they will come. Sometimes they come during the night, as late as 11 p.m. when I'm sleeping. So I'll link to the full article. And again, I really recommend everybody read it in its entirety. But I also wanted to just highlight the fact that I love that he calls President Obama out on this. He says, quote, "The only reason I am still here is that President Obama refuses to send any detainees back to Yemen. This makes no sense. I am a human being, not a passport, and I deserve to be treated like one. I do not want to die here, but until President Obama and Yemen's president do something, that is what I risk every day." So obviously, really, really powerful. Kudos to the New York Times for publishing it, because this is what they should do all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the job of good journalism, right? It's like represent people who don't have a voice.
Right. Glenn Greenwald takes Obama to task even further in his article at The Guardian.
I mean, this was one of his sort of like no-brainers, progressive things that he was going to do when he wanted to get elected was close Guantanamo.
Yeah. Well, Greenwald writes, Obama sought not to close Guantanamo, but simply to relocate it to Illinois. And in doing so, to preserve what makes it such a travesty of justice, its system of indefinite detention. And then he goes on, but Obama's responsibility for the Guantanamo disgrace extends beyond that. Muck Bell, the author of this op-ed, is Yemeni. More than half of the remaining 166 detainees at the camp are Yemeni. Dozens of those Yemenis, along with dozens of other detainees, have long ago been cleared for release by the U.S. government on the ground that there's no evidence to believe that they are a threat to anyone. A total of 87 of the remaining detainees, roughly half, have been cleared for release, of which 58 are Yemeni. Not even the U.S. government at this point claims they are guilty or pose a threat to anyone.
Jesus Christ.
So when you couple that amazing fact with the heartbreaking narrative written by Muck Bell, how could anyone claim that this is doing any good, not violating human rights?
And this is sort of the shitstorm you get yourself into when your foreign policy is predicated on illegal actions, right? When you just start sweeping a bunch of people up randomly, or in the case of Iraq, offering rewards to poor neighborhoods for terrorists, locking up 16-year-old kids who throw stones justifiably when you're invading their land. And then they've been in jail for 6 years, 10 years, 15 years, being tortured. And then you go, okay, well, we have a new president now. He's a Democrat. He wants to let you all out because this is a horrible, illegal place that incorporates torture. It's one of the places in the world that is making the entire Middle East mad at America. It symbolizes everything wrong we are doing. And then you go, well, you can't really let them out because when you let them out, they're going to be really pissed off, justifiably. And then what the fuck are you going to do? And
that's the problem. There is no longer a requirement to present evidence in a trial that they are in any way a threat to the United States homeland security.
Yeah.
You can literally just say, well, they'll join the battlefield and just speculate, and that suddenly condemns these men to death in prison. No evidence, no trial. They lock them away to die.
If this ever happens to me, by the way, can I opt to be killed by a drone instead of locked in Guantanamo? If I'm gonna be illegally,
let's say both are bad.
I'll take your fucking Insta Sky Robot death over fucking 16 years of having tube shoved in my face, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat stunned that the New York Times published it. I'm incredibly grateful that they did. Yeah. I hope they continue to do stuff like this because instead of devoting column space to David Brooks or fucking Ross Doodit, they actually provided a valuable service, and that was amplifying Muck Bell's voice, a voice we never would have heard. No. And that's the rule of good journalism.